work through that, finding out who we are, what we are, what is our path. And I talk to a lot of folks and they say, I just want to know what my path is. I want to know, what it is that I'm meant to do. And you're meant to be. We're all meant to be. Yes, I'm a Druid. I am also a practitioner of Native American tradition. I am also a practitioner of African tradition. I am also a Reiki master. The best part of what we do is that we don't have to choose one.
Yes.
We can be whatever we want. We can be a Druid Christian. We can be a pagan Muslim. You can be whatever resonates with you, because ultimately it's not about what's written in a book. It's about what is in your heart and your personal relationship with Creator. And one of the times that we have to really ponder that is during the winter time, when everything is quiet. Well, technically, unless you've been to a mall. But Star Wars is coming out. So, not a lot of quiet there for stuff. It's here. Not a lot of quiet around Star Wars. But other than that, and the thing is, and that's one of the things that, for me, I believe creates some of the tension, because there's a lot of people who get stressed out, a lot of people who experience a lot of sadness and sorrow. And part of it is that, some very hard things happen sometimes. But the other part, I think, is because we kind of have it backwards. We take the time of the year that we are supposed to be quiet, introspective, and gentle, and it's turned into a very high energy type of time. And that creates dissonance. It is so important for us to recognize that we are as much a creature on this planet as anything else. Yes, we walk on 2 legs, but we really carry more similarities with those who walk on 4, because of the fact that we know, our bodies know that at this time is our time of rest. It's the time to think about what's going on. It's the time to appreciate family and friends. Now, back in the olden days, as the Irish and the Celts throughout Ireland and Scotland and England, one of the things that happened was they made a pilgrimage to a place called Newgrange. Newgrange is to the winter solstice what Stonehenge is to the summer solstice. And Newgrange was where the Druids gathered and held their ceremonies, celebrating the coming of spring, the coming of the sun, the lessening of the darkness. And there would be large houses that were built specifically for these types of journeys. And in communities all over, the UK and all over the British Isles, there would be houses that would be specifically built as common houses. And where if you did not have a large family, you would gather there. And there was lots of wood, and there was food, and everything was set up. And because it was the place where everybody was going to hunker down for the next few months. One of the things that was a tradition was if you had a disagreement with someone, you had to settle it before you went into the common house. And if you did not settle it, you stood in the snow. The 2 of you glaring at each other. Until you reach that place of, what, we've got to have this settled, we'll agree to disagree, or however you manage it. But when you came into that common house, you were at peace. Because any disruption, when you've got a whole bunch of people huddled in together, that is not the time to start bringing up, I never did like your mother. So couples did not get into arguments. Any argument, you stood in the snow. And let the snow, take it outside. And let the cold and the snow teach you about cooperation. It was a time of storytelling. It was a time where the men would get together and talk about the hunts that happened. And it's like, that was no hunt. Now you want to hear about a hunt, I will tell you about a good hunt.
So they talked about the game even then?
Yeah, they talked about the game. The Bears.
Go Niners.
Yeah, go Niners. Talk about a Christmas miracle. Oh, no, she didn't. quirks in all things. Love them to death, love them to death. But the idea that it was a time for people to share, not just, among their families, it was multi-generational. You had, the young boys listening to the tales of the men of the hunt and of battles and seeing themselves step up into when I'm grown, when I can step up into my community. And that is something that I think in a way we miss here, is that our young ones often don't get to feel that point when they've stepped into their community. In many traditions and in different parts of the world, where people will gather together and it's like, okay, when you've reached this point, you now step up as an adult in your community and here are your responsibilities and you are welcomed into it. And in the Celtic tradition, when a young woman had her first moon and she was taken out, she was placed in a wicker cage that hung and a small pit was dug underneath her and she remained there for 4 days. And then she was bathed in the river. And then she had ribbons placed in her hair, and her hair was braided into the style of the women. And she was brought into the community as a woman. And she could, she would then have responsibilities. But, for that moment, she was the envy of the other girls. And young boys, they sit through that long, dark winter and plan out their futures because they're visualizing themselves in that hunt. And they're visualizing themselves in that battle. And it allows them to have that pride of saying, one day I'm going to do this for my community. I'm going to bring home the biggest boar out there and feed everyone. That was the time of dreaming. It was the time that the elders got to, step forward because they were the ones who remembered. They were the ones who were able to speak about times long ago, tales of, the activities of the gods. Stories that had morals woven in, that had lessons woven in. And it was such a quiet time that everyone listened. To be able to enjoy that and have that type of communal life, that life was hard. And I would imagine very little that would have warmed my heart more than to sit around and watch a roaring fire and hear the tales of those older than me. And wondering how I would step up into that life. And how I would step up. How would destiny remember me? What would be my tales that I would tell? One of the aspects is the Yule log. And in the Celtic tradition, the idea was that the Yule log was lit. It could not be purchased. It had to be given, or it had to be grown on your own property. It had to have come from a tree on your property. The Yule log was burned in a special section of the fireplace. There was this huge hearth and fireplace. And the Yule log was burned in a special section because it burned for 12 days only. Then it was extinguished with ceremony. The ashes were gathered and the ashes were mixed with soil that would be used in the planting that would come in the spring. Because they believed it was that continuity. Then the Yule log, which was always lit from the fire of the previous year's Yule log, would carry on that tradition and carry on that lineage. As families traveled, the Yule log went with them. If one of the sons got married or if one of the daughters got married, a piece of that Yule log was taken and it was given to them for their hearth. So thus there was the lineage. There was the continuity. There was the knowledge that as a community we remain. And yes, there were arguments. Yes, there were times when people, just got on each other's last nerve, which is being closed up in a while for several months, or at least a few months, which probably felt like several months. It meant that no matter what we disagree about, no matter what we resent about each other, we are community. We are family. We are going to be attached to each other. When we're no longer angry, we're still family. When we're happy with each other, we are still family. And community and family were almost synonymous. Your clan was your clan. I think of CCL as my clan.
Yay!
I think of UCM as my clan.
Yay!
And the idea that no matter what ideas, no matter what conflicts, no matter what rejoicing happens, the fact that we're clan does not change anything. It doesn't change at all. And when we look at the idea that we spend so much time, in that huddled place, we may not physically be huddled together, but we can be spiritually huddled together. Our spirits can be with one another when one of us is going through something. Whether you're with that person or not, your heart goes out to them. And then there we are, all together in front of the fire, telling stories, encouraging one another. And then usually sometime during the time of the solstice, the Druid, who was the local Druid, who would be an ovate. Now the levels of Druid are Bard, Ovate, and Full Druid. The Bard was the early internet. Going around, that was where all the information came from. That was how communities knew what was going on in other communities. Now the Ovate was usually the community healer. They would be the fortune teller, the hedge witch, and the Druid version of witch is called a Gwenin. That'll be for another sermon. Anyway, but you got the word, Gwenin. So the idea that these were the people who were directly connected to the communities. And what they would do is, they would be the healers, they were the midwives, they would, check into everything. They also settled local disputes. Often, the ovate was assigned to maybe 2 or 3 communities that were fairly close together, within a day's walk of each other. And so it was during the winter time that the Druid would go from one community to another and check to see who was sick, make sure that, any of the pregnant women, that they were doing well. They would stay with that community in their community house for maybe a few days, and then they would bundle themselves up and head out into the snow to go and visit the next community and make sure that they were all right. And it was throughout the winter that the Druids did this, just to make sure that everyone was okay. And in kind of envisioning, wow, if my car breaks down, I don't even think I'm going to the store. It's just like a mile down the road. It's like, that's okay, I'll eat ramen noodle. But, they headed out and they took care of their people, because that's what they did. That's what they signed on for. And that was one of the things that, when people would talk about the Druids, they'd say it's like, well, they don't get affected by cold or heat. That no matter what, they're there. They seem to be there when you need them, before you even know you need them. And it was just because they tapped into something. They tapped into a frequency of the community and of the people they loved. And I don't think there's anybody here who has not had the experience that when someone that you love suddenly is on your mind and you go, wait a minute, there's something wrong. And you call them up. And they'll go, oh my gosh, I'm glad you called. Because something's going on. I mean, I seriously, everybody I think who I've ever talked to has had at least one case where that happened. Where they suddenly got a feeling that they needed to call somebody, and it turned out they needed help. The Druids tapped into that on the level of the community. It's like, okay, there's something going on in this community. Gotta go check it out. And just going from one common house to another. And during that time, because the Ovate had already gone through the level of the Druid training, they were also welcome because they told stories. And so, I would guess after a couple of months, you get tired of the stories. It's like, yeah, we heard about the hunt. Oh my God. Yes, your fishing trip. First it was the size of your arm, then it was the size of your leg, then it was the size of a man. Okay. So the Druid was able to bring in new stories and information from the other villages, and also information from the ruling bodies of the community. It's like, what's the chieftain doing? And sometimes they would take the leaders of the community aside and say, okay, as soon as the winter's over, when we're out of here, this is what's going to be going on. This is the type of thing that you can expect. They were also there to help with checking the animals, because the animals had to be checked through the winter. And if an animal was sick, they would make sure that when the Druid was there, so the Druid went out and checked every single animal that was there. So it was a way of being that allowed for the community to receive the absolute best of itself. Everyone knew when we go in, you know, we're going to keep it peaceful in here, we're going to keep it quiet in here, we're going to, you know, maybe the babies are sleeping, maybe the baby's fussy. Nobody worried about a fussy baby. It was like, okay, you know, and whoever was nearby it picked it up and comforted it. It wasn't like, excuse me, your child's acting up, do something. And if it was going to be any kid, it was going to be mine. Oh my gosh. You know those people you hate to sit next to on the airplane because of their kid? That would be me. So, and hey, it happens. We were all babies once. So also in this communal place, there was no judgment about, oh, what their child is doing. Every child was everybody's child.
Like King.
It's like, okay, if just like King, you know, if they're acting up, everybody would say, it's like, hey, hey, hey. Or if they needed comfort, or if they needed a little bit of food. You know, everybody got up. You wouldn't have been able to tell whose child was whose. Wouldn't that be cool? If we had an entire community, a city, a state, a nation, a world that felt that way. Hey, that child's hungry. I'll feed it. That child needs to be rocked. I'll take care of them. That elder needs help. Hey, they're my elder. The child is my child. Every man is my brother. Every woman is my sister. And we take care of each other. Because the only way we survive is if we take care of each other.
Exactly.
And during those long winters, it was making sure that everyone was taken care of. If someone, you know, didn't have, you know, sometimes you might have an elder who didn't have any young people to help with the farming. They were taken care of. Somebody went over and helped farm for them. So we were able to take care of each other. We are greater than the sum of our parts. That means that we are pretty amazing as the sum of our parts. Each one of us here is really amazing.
Yay!
Yay! But when we put ourselves together, when we bind that energy, whether it's for warmth, or whether it's, you know, to take on a cause, to correct something, to feed the children, to take care of the elders. Those are the types of things that people dreamed about when they were in the common house together. Somebody says, wow, you know, my husband passed away and I don't know how I'm going to farm. That was a time when people go, okay, we're going to help you do this. We're going to take care of you. You know, we're going to make sure that your children are fed. The plans were set out. Everything was prepared so that when you did come out, when spring did happen, everybody hit the ground running. Nobody was wondering, wow, I wonder what I should do. I wonder. Everybody knew. Everybody knew who needed help. Everybody knew what they needed to do for their clan. Everybody knew what they needed to do for the community at large. And the Druid was there to help out just with some of the details, but then they backed away. It's like, all right, here's the groundwork. Sounds like you got a good plan. See you in 3 months. Because it was up to each community to survive, they knew they weren't going to depend on the Druid to do it all. Each one said, all right, we've got a plan. All of us have to be able to stand up for the plan and support it for our community to survive to the next winter. So the idea of winter, you know, sometimes people, you know, just is like, oh my gosh, it's Christmas season, it's the holidays, it's rush, rush, rush. Try not to rush so much. The season will go on without you. The malls will go on without you.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, that's what you're afraid of. In my family, one year, we all got together and made a concerted decision that, and it was once all the little kids had pretty much grown, but it was before they started reproducing into the next generation. So there was this there was a couple of seasons there where it was like, wow, we're all kind of grown. And we all decided you will get a card from each and every person, and that was your gift.
That's right.
All it was a card. And the card inside said one thing that they would do for somebody else. It was sort of like, back when we made the little coupon books. And the card said, when you need me, I will be there for you in whatever way you need me. And that was the gift. And everybody remembered that. But nobody had to go Christmas shopping.
Yay!
Yay! Although, I will tell you that I do like going out to the malls on Christmas Eve just because I like the energy of it. There really is. There's something about, we all waited till the last minute. Hey, we're in the same club, we'll relax. There's kind of that resigned sort of, yeah, I waited. Maybe next year I'll do it sooner, but hey, go for it. We wear hats, we sing, it's like, I was actually in the line, we all bust out in Christmas carols,
Yay!
and it was just so
Awesome.
fun. Granted, I was wearing a striped hat with big ears on it, but so, that may have set the mood. So be gentle with yourselves.
Yes.
Be gentle with each other. Settle your arguments in the snow, because believe me, there is nothing that shortens an argument faster than standing out in the cold. And let yourselves receive the best gift that you can possibly receive. The knowledge that you made it through another year. It may have been bumpy, it may not have been pretty, but you made it. And that out of all the things that you've dealt with, you've succeeded in overcoming 100%. Look to the future, set that plan, set the dream. Decide how destiny is going to remember you and what tales will be told of you. And be blessed.
Well, April, that's kind of a tough act to follow.
I
Come
know.
on. Please welcome.
Oh, well, can we have the choir sing?
Would you like the choir to sing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I love it when other people are in control.